It all started with a bet. It was a hot Saturday afternoon in the heart of Kogi State, Nigeria. We were sitting under a large mango tree in the outskirts of Eda, in a small clearing by the old village path. The dry, cracked earth beneath our feet was a testament to the scorching sun that had been beating down on us all day. There were 5 of us: me, Shuka, Kelechi, Ada and Bolu. Just a group of friends from the university on holiday, looking for a bit of excitement away from the usual routine. We had been sitting there for hours talking about life and making jokes when Shuka, being the troublemaker he was, blurted out an idea that changed everything. I dare anyone to spend the night in Mama Rashida's abandoned compound. The moment the word left his mouth, the mood shifted. Mama Rashidat was a well-known figure in the village, or at least she had been. For years, she ran a small buka, local restaurant, on the edge of the forest where travelers and locals alike would stop for meals. She was a friendly old woman, always ready with a smile and a plate of pounded yam. But one day, without warning, she disappeared. No one ever knew where she went. Her compound, including her restaurant, was left exactly as it was. Pot still on the stove, plates on the table, but no sign of her. Some said she had simply left to be with her children in another state. Others whispered that something darker had happened to her. The villagers stayed away from her property, and over time, rumors of strange occurrences around the compound began to spread. Kelechi laughed nervously. "Ah, Shuka, you and your wahala. Do you want to wake the spirit? Everyone knows that place is haunted." Bolu, who was always the skeptic, rolled his eyes. "Haunted? It's just an old compound. If anything, it's probably filled with rats now." Shuka smirked, obviously enjoying the effects his challenge was having. "So you are saying you are too scared, Abi?" Ada, who had been quiet up to that point, spoke up. "Nobody's scared. It's just, well, you know how villagers talk. What if something rare is wrong with that place?" I could see the nervousness spreading through the group. Even Bolu, who was always the logical one, seemed unsure. But I didn't want to back down. But something about the challenge intrigued me. After all, it was just an old compound, right? "I will do it," I said suddenly, surprising even myself. All eyes turned to me. Shuka grinned. "I knew you would do be game. So who is going with her?" Silence. No one else seemed eager to volunteer. "I am in," Kelechi finally said. "I don't believe in all that ghost nonsense. Besides, we are university students. We shouldn't be afraid of old wives' tale." Bolu shook his head but didn't say anything. Ada looked at me with concern but didn't argue. And just like that, the bet was sealed. The plan was simple. Kelechi and I would head to the compound later that evening, just before sunset, and we would stay the night. If we lasted till morning, we do win the bet, and Shuka would owe us a free meal at the best suya spot in town. By the time Kelechi and I arrived at the old compound, the sun was already dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows over the empty house. The air was still, and the only sound was the occasional chirping of crickets. The once vibrant buka now stood airy, silent, its wooden shutters hanging crooked, and the faded sign over the door barely visible in the dim light. Why do I feel like this is a bad idea? Kelechi muttered under his breath as we stepped through the rusted gate. The compound was exactly as the rumor described. It looked as though it had been abandoned in a hurry. Old pots and plates still sat on the kitchen counter, and there was even some forgotten jerry cans in one corner, now covered in dust. The chairs in the dining area were overturned, and cobwebs clung on the walls. The whole place felt frozen in time. We set up our mat in the middle of the compound, near the veranda, where we could keep an eye on the entrance and still be sheltered from the wind. I could tell Kelechi was nervous, but he was doing his best to keep it together. Just one night, I said, trying to reassure both of us. By morning, we'll be laughing about this. The night passed uneventfully. For the first few hours, we sat around talking, trying to distract ourselves from the errant silence of the compound. But as the hours dragged on and the night deepened, things began to change. It started with a soft rustling sound, like someone moving around inside the compound. At first, I thought it was just the wind blowing through the trees, but then I realized there wasn't any wind. The night was completely still. "Did you hear that?" Kelechi whispered, his eyes wide. I nodded, straining my ears to listen. The sound was coming from inside the buka, near the kitchen area. It was faint, like footsteps shuffling on the dusty floor. My heart started to race, but I tried to stay calm. "Maybe it's a rat," I said, though I wasn't convinced. Kelechi shook his head. "That doesn't sound like a rat." Suddenly, there was a loud thud, like something heavy had fallen inside the building. We both jumped on our feet, our eyes locked on the open doorway to the kitchen. I could feel the fear rising in my chest, but I wasn't about to let Kelechi see that I was scared. "Stay here," I said, grabbing the torchlight we had brought with us. "I will go check it out." Kelechi looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. I took a deep breath and made my way towards the kitchen, the beam of my torch cutting through the darkness. The air inside the buka was heavy, and I could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on me. When I reached the kitchen, I shone the light around, looking for any sign of what had caused the noise. At first, I didn't see anything unusual, but then, in the corner of the room, I saw it. A large metal pot lying on the floor, overturned. It looked like it had fallen from the shelf above, but there was no one in sight. I turned to leave when something else caught my eyes. There, on the dusty floor, were footprints. Fresh footprints. They weren't mine, and they definitely weren't Kelechi's. Someone or something had been in the kitchen. I felt a chill run down my spine. My first instinct was to run, but I forced myself to stay calm. I backed out of the kitchen slowly, not taking my eyes off the footsteps until I was back outside with Kelechi. "What did you see?" he asked, his voice shaky. I held my torch, showed him the beam on the ground. Footprints. Kelechi's face went pale. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "Someone else is here." We spent the rest of the night huddled together on the veranda, too scared to go back inside. Every little sound made us jump, and I could tell that Kenichi was starting to regret his decision to join me. I couldn't blame him. I was regretting it too. As the night wore on, we heard more noises, rustling, shuffling, and once, what sounds like the sound clinking of pots. But we never saw anyone. By the time the first light of dawn began to break through the trees, we were both exhausted and ready to leave. We packed up our things in silence. Neither of us wanted to talk about what had happened. As we walked back to the village, the relief of leaving the compound behind was palpable. But there was still one thing that nagged at me: the footprint. Whoever or whatever had been in that kitchen, it wasn't just some random animal. When we got back to the village, Shuka was waiting for us. He grinned when he saw us, clearly expecting us to admit defeat. "So how was it?" he asked, leaning against a tree. Kenichi shook his head. "We stayed the night, but something was definitely wrong with that place." Shuka's grin faded. "What do you mean?" "There were footsteps," I said, my voice low. "Fresh ones and strange noises. Someone or something was in that compound with us." Shuka's eyes widened, and for the first time since we made the bet, he looked genuinely worried. Weeks passed and life in the village went back to normal. But I couldn't shake the feelings that something had followed us from Mama Rashida's compound. I started having strange dreams. Dreams of an old woman wandering through the forest, calling out for help, but no one ever answering her. And sometimes, late at night, I would hear the sound of pots clicking in the distance, even though there were no one else around. I don't know what happened to Mama Rashida, and I am not sure I want to know. All I know is that I will never set foot in that compound again. Whatever is out there is better left forgotten.
Dear listeners, I would like to clarify that the story you have just listened to is a work of fiction and not based on real events or individuals, including myself. While some elements of the story may be inspired by real-life experiences or observations, the characters, events, and situations portrayed are entirely fictional. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story, and I hope you enjoyed the fictional journey it took you on. Thank you. Subscribe, like, and comment for more stories.